Okay, so our work tonight, our bit of training tonight is all about Microsoft Teams, a bit of a beginner's guide in setting it up, how to get the most out of it, how to set up an effective Teams channel for your students, to share resources, you know, all the good things that Teams can do for you and help you in your institutions. You can see here, you know, all the different links we've got, all of the different people we're learning from and working with at the moment. So let's move on. So first of all then, who are we then? Now my name's Ashley Howe. I'm the faculty head of STEM at Wilberforce College. Within my faculty area, we've got science, maths, engineering, and geography. And we offer a mixed provision. We offer GCSEs, we offer BTEC qualifications at level 2 and level 3. We offer A-levels in biology, chemistry, physics, maths, geography, the list goes on. Now, a bit about my background is, for a lot of my career, I've worked in a secondary school dealing with Key Stage 3 students, Key Stage 4 students, and things like that. I've had a role as a coach. So I've had experience of a few different areas in education, and at the moment, I'm working in the college sector and really enjoying it and finding that we're adapting to the global situation fairly well. I think we're doing a good job with Teams at the moment. Now, I do want to say, you know, I'm not an expert at all, and there's a lot I can still learn about Teams, but I just want to share a few things that have worked for myself. I'll just pass over to my colleague Abby to introduce herself.
Hi, so I'm Abby Godge, and I teach chemistry here at Wilberforce. So I've been here for 6 years now. Can't quite believe that amount of time has passed since I moved from a large secondary school in the East Riding. So I've also got quite a lot of experience in terms of teaching Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, as well as sixth form, which is what I teach at the moment. So I teach A-level and I teach level 2 science as well, and I also teach on the level 3 BTEC forensics and criminal investigation course.
Brilliant. So we were having a little think about Microsoft Teams and where we've started and where we've come to. And really, we just wanted to talk about some of the challenges presented with remote learning. Now, everyone will have their own different challenges depending on what key stage you're teaching, but these are some that came to mind when we were working on it. So first of all, one of the really tricky things we were worried about in the first lockdown back in March was explaining concepts and delivering information clearly when you're not face-to-face with learners. For our whole careers, we've been face-to-face with learners, and we've been able to do things like mini whiteboards, get them to share resources, marketplace activities, group work, practicals. So this is something that we've never encountered before. And of course, it's something that students are concerned about, parents are, and teachers like ourselves are as well. Another issue was sharing resources with students. How can you give a student a test paper or a resource when you're not allowed to come in within 2 meters distance from them, and any paperwork you give them sort of have 72 hours to quarantine, for example? You know, it's a tough situation. Also, assessment for learning. If you can't assess the learners, you can't really plan your lessons and know where to target the students. Also, tracking attendance. It's something that we were very concerned about in the beginning, was how are we going to effectively track attendance and make sure that students are doing the work we set, engaging with the online lessons we do. Setting classwork and homework for students as well, another issue there. And another one was staff were concerned about students not putting in full effort. You know, they might join a team session, but are they really engaging with the learning like they would in a formal lesson, in a face-to-face lesson? Are they putting as much effort in, or are they on their phones in between activities, or, you know, watching TV in the background? These are all things we kind of were concerned about. Now, the list goes on and on and on. We can probably sit here for the full hours meeting tonight, hours training tonight, and go through different areas that we were concerned about with remote learning. But Microsoft Teams does help with this, and we've got the Teams logo here. It's a little bit cringy what I've done here, but we've got Microsoft Teams with little halos there. I'm a very cheesy person, but yeah, Teams can help with this. It's certainly helped us, hasn't it, Abby?
Yeah, definitely.
It certainly helped our practice. So these are some of the ways that we felt Teams can happen. So I've put the challenges on the left, and, you know, explaining concepts and delivering information clearly. How can we do that? How can we get the information students need to know to them in a way that they'll understand consistently and clearly? Well, we can do that via meetings. We can do that by sharing video, sharing audio. We can send them announcements. You know, a lot of these are applicable to multiple different challenges. We also looked at setting up channels with resource banks that students can access, which link learners to useful sites. A little bit like a VLE, but rather than being this website that you've really got to force students to use, it could be an app on their phone where they get notifications and it's interactive. So they're actually going to use the resources on this platform rather than it just being a separate website that we've got to kind of keep directing students to use. We can also do question and answer sessions. You know, that hits on assessment for learning. So we can actually ask them to explain a topic, to produce some notes and take a picture and upload it into the chat. So ask them how they're feeling about this topic. Are they confident in it? Are they ready to move on, or do they need a little bit more time? Now, this point here, a big one is you can ask students, you know, if you say, right, produce a mind map, guys, on, you know, cells, let's say, for example, you can say, once you've done that, take a picture and upload it into the chat, because the vast majority of them will they'll either be on their smartphone completing Teams work, or they'll be on a laptop with a smartphone in their pocket. So they're always going to be able to take a picture of their work and post it. So that's a really good way to just keep students accountable and make sure that they are actually doing the work that's being set. We can also set assignments, which will give us a tick, or, you know, it'll show up whether they've done the work or not. We can integrate OneNote in there, so we can get students to actually produce work within Teams, and we can watch them do it, and we can actually add comments, put little stickers on their work. We can add little audio notes explaining how to improve the work they've done. You know, the list goes on and on and on. We also have a live attendance list for every lesson, so you can see who's there and who's not, and you can update Sims using that. You can update Columbus or whatever information management system you might be using at your particular school or college. And then finally, we can record lessons. So that's touching on explaining concepts and delivering information clearly. So students can re-watch it if they were struggling. Another student who may have been ill, who couldn't actually join the session, they can watch it at a later stage. You know, again, the list goes on, and, you know, a little diagrammatic representation of how all these different things link. You know, there we go. Nice and easy for everyone to follow, isn't it? Right, I'll hand over to Abby for the next session.
Okay, so just a bit of information about the webinar itself and how to use it. So if you're viewing this on a PC or a Mac, then the question and answer session is in the top right corner for you to look. So that's highlighted on this slide in this red box. And if you're watching on a phone or a tablet, then the question and answer session is highlighted in the red box on that side. Please do ask us a question. There's two of us here, so we'll monitor the chat, and also Jonathan is a producer as well, so he'll have a look at the question and answers. If we spot one as we're talking, we'll stop and answer it, and if not, we'll answer it at the end in the Q&A session if we can.
There was one that came in. I did respond to it, but I didn't know if you wanted to tackle it straight away. I published it just now.
Yeah, so we had a question from Anonymous. We'll give it a thumbs up. So it said, hello, Abby and Ash. How do you manage behaviour in teams? Really good question.
It is a really good question. And actually, at the beginning of lockdown, the honest answer is that I didn't. I just kind of contacted students, set up a meeting. And to be honest, my lessons were really, really basic right at the beginning, because I was learning the platform just exactly the same as a lot of them were, to be fair. And I think that's one of the things, the sort of the assumptions that I made at the beginning of lockdown was the fact that the students knew how to use this new platform, because they were much more au fait with social media and the like, that I'm not particularly. So the short answer is I didn't. At the beginning. As time has gone on and I've got more au fait with using Teams, and I've got more au fait with what it can do and the sorts of activities that you can plan into Teams, I really strongly believe now that there's not that much difference between what you can get the students to do on Teams and what you can get them to do when they're in the classroom in front of you. Albeit obviously they can't do practicals, you know, they can't have test tubes and glassware around and things. So in that regard, I've got much better at planning for remote lessons and for students that are working off site, and that has helped to manage the behaviour. And the consequence for me that I see is that I get much better attendance now, and much better interaction when we're actually on the online lesson. I don't know what you would say about that.
I'd say the same, really. I think it's a good question. It's something that we all thought about when we were using it, and I'm sure we've all heard, you know, scare stories of students sharing inappropriate things or being disruptive or things like that. Now, the way I tend to approach it is I don't expect my students to put their webcams on. I don't expect them to put their mics on. That's different for every member of staff. Some members of staff may want to do that, and that's totally fine as well. But from my point of view, I don't really want them to do that, because it allows me to have more control over the session. I have the power to kick any student if they are being disruptive and they're not supporting a positive learning environment in any way. Then also what we can do is we can end the session. So if for example there was a lot of behaviour from the entire group, you could end the session. Now, fortunately, I've not encountered a member of staff who's needed to do that, but we'll show you later on how you can end the meeting for all of the students. Now, from my point of view, the fact I don't ask students to share their audio or their video, there could be a problem there, and it could be, you know, how do you know the students are doing the work you're asking? So what I do is I regularly ask them in the chat to post pictures of what they're doing, and that's the way I get around it there. And I'll do question and answer sessions a little bit like with mini whiteboards. So I might post into the chat, you know, describe the difference between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell, and I'll expect all of them to answer, and I will give an awkward pause until all of them have answered. And you tend to find at first it might be a little bit slow going, but you stick with it and you keep going and going and going, and eventually they'll all answer, you know, quick as a flash, because they know you're going to give it a bit of an awkward pause. So it's again, you know, you've all got a wealth of experience. You all know what to do in the classroom. You all know how to behaviour management in the classroom, and it's just using those skills you've got and applying them to a digital situation. Yeah. You have the ability as well to mute them in the meetings and things like that. So there are settings that you can use to mute them and stop them posting if you're getting inappropriate comments and things like that in the chat. Yeah, I mean, we have had instances of that, haven't we? But you know, it doesn't tend to last long when they can't post anymore. So and you tend to find it'll be one student and the rest of the class will just be wanting to get on with the work, because I found that the students are really appreciative that you're actually trying to do remote lessons with them and trying to do video lessons with them, you know, during a lockdown. And I think they do appreciate the effort you put in. So the majority of them are good as gold, and they do what you ask, and it works a lot better than you might originally think. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, they're pretty sympathetic, certainly of my skills anyway. They are pretty sympathetic when it comes to
and if the Wi-Fi cuts out, or you can't figure out how to upload a file or something like that, and you just make a bit of a joke of it, they're fine. That's my experience anyway. But
hope that answers the question.
Hopefully that answers it. Okay. So there's a picture of the front of the college at Wilberforce. Hopefully some of you have visited and seen the college, which would be great. And if you haven't, then we hope you do in the future. So this bit is my bit, and this is basically some screenshots from Teams. Now we are going to demo this live in a bit, and you might see us, you know, apologising for technical issues and fumbling and things like that. So, you know, again, we're not experts.
It's really typical.
Same. But so this is how it goes. Now on the left, you'll have all the teams you're in a part of. Now, if you want to set up a channel, so you might be given a lesson there, you know, GCSE French or Key Stage 3 biology or whatever your subject is. And what you'll do is you'll click on the three little dots. You'll find with a lot of things on Teams, if you want the extra menu, you click on the three little dots on the right hand side, and you can see there you've got a few options. So you can hide the particular channel if you don't want to see it popping up all the time. You can manage the channel, where you can change the settings. you can add a channel. So for example, each of these channels here will have been added by clicking that button and entering the name. And you can see on the right, so if you click that button there, add channel, and then you see the panel on the right, so you've got the channel name that you can input there. You can input a description. I don't tend to do that because it's not really needed. And then this little tick box at the bottom is really handy, because I would recommend selecting that, because it says automatically show this channel in everyone's channel list, and you tick there. Now what might happen in some channels is if you don't tick that box, they won't appear, and there'll be a little bit at the bottom that says hidden channels, and you have to actually manually go in and click to show that particular channel. You can also set up private channels, so you know there might be 30 or so people as part of a group. You might have 2 teachers sharing a class, and you might want to set up a channel that only you and the other teacher can access to add resources or share planning or something like that, for example. Okay, now I think it's over to you, isn't it, Abby?
Yeah, it is. Okay, so I thought one of the most important things for me in using Teams is the fact that I can share resources with my students and with other members of staff if necessary, really quickly and really easily. John will probably hate this way that I am presenting to you, but in my opinion, this is the easiest one to, if you're learning of how to share resources. So in Teams, you would click on the new conversation button, which you would find at the bottom of every channel. Okay, so that's when you just start in a new conversation with a new group of people, or the whole team, or all the people that are in your team. When you click that button, this comes up. All right, so something that looks like this. There are various options. So if you want to start a new conversation, you literally just type, all right, in there, and then click send. If you want to attach a file, then you use the paperclip function, which is the bit that I'm going to show you now. So if you hit the paperclip, that then gives you options to where you want to upload a file from. So upload from your computer, OneDrive, Teams, or anything that you've been working on recently. If you then choose your file and upload it, okay, and hit the send button, that will upload your file into that conversation, and whoever you're sending it to, you'll get a little message that says you've shared this particular file. Whoever you're sending it to will be able to open and download that file depending on the permissions. So this is an example of one that I have used to share with my Year 1 chemistry class. So I've shared these particular Word documents. I've written them a bit of a message as to what I want them to do with those Word documents, and I've posted that into the general channel. Quick sort of word of warning, you can post resources straight into this files tab, and at the beginning that's quite tempting to do. If you do that, they end up just being put into that files tab in whatever folders you you make in that files tab, but they can be a bit jumbled up, and by the time you get sort of a few months in, if you've been uploading quite a lot of files and sharing quite a lot of files, that can get really complicated, and it can get lost. It's fine when you're starting and you've only got a few things to find, so I would say that this is the easiest way to share resources in Teams if you're just starting out. If you're a bit more confident with Teams and you do want to start organising your resources for your students to look at so that they can work out where everything is without having to scroll through the posts, then later on in the webinars, so we will give you a much better idea for organising your work so that everybody can access everything going forward in the years to come. Okay, if you're manually setting up your teams each year, every time you manually set up a new team, these files will disappear if you do it this way. So that's just something to be aware of in the future.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea to say that if you are manually setting up your teams, it works great. The thing is, though, like Abby said, if each year when you get new classes, the resources won't pull through to those future classes. Yeah. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. If your institution has Google Drive or SharePoint or something like that, we personally use SharePoint. You can save it all on SharePoint, and then Teams will talk to SharePoint, and every time you have a new class, in that subject area, the resources on SharePoint will be available through Teams. I haven't quite mastered that yet. Abby's a bit better at that than me. I've done a few things on there, and the potential for that is fantastic. It's really good. Now we have had a question from Charlotte Evans. It says, do you have subject teams with channels separating subject groups or individual subject group teams?
Student group teams.
Student group teams, sorry.
So we have subject groups and year groups. So for instance, I've got a team for my second year chemists and I've got a team for my first year chemists. Just talking about the SharePoint, which we have just talked about, because we use SharePoint, both of those teams are linked via SharePoint. So that means that I can post resources for my year 1 chemists that my year 2 chemists can see as well, and have access to. So that's brilliant in terms of revision, because I want the year 2s to revise everything in year 1 as well. But as I say, I haven't chosen to talk to you about that way of sharing resources, because the brief for this webinar was to try and keep it as easy as possible, so for people that are just starting to use Teams. So that's the reason why I've chosen to show you how to share resources this way. But as the webinars carry on, we will show you more complicated ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Not complicated, just more structured.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good point there, is about sharing the resources, and I can do it, so it's idiot proof with that one.
Well, yeah, if I can learn how to use Teams, definitely anybody can, because I was a complete technophobe before. Well, before February, really. But
it's honestly, it's one of those things that if you throw yourself in at the deep end and you just say, right, I'm using it now, and you're going to make mistakes, you're going to, try and figure things out along the way, but it's as easy to use as Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or Outlook. It's just as easy to use as any of those. It's just because I wasn't familiar with the different links and sites that.
I believe you.
I don't. Yeah.
You see, I didn't even use any of that sort of stuff before February, so.
Right. Okay.
I still don't really. Teams is my social media.
Right.
As far as it goes.
I'm not sure if you covered it, but Charlotte did ask another question.
Oh, yeah. So Charlotte has asked. So she said, do you manually set them up? Well, I can answer that one a little bit, actually. So yeah, thanks for your question again, Charlotte. So in the beginning, before the first lockdown, we were manually setting up our teams, and that worked. It worked if you're doing them just for your own groups. But now we have it done centrally by our MIS department, so that they will do it for all of us and roll it out on a college-wide level. And it's literally, you go onto Teams and all your classes are there for you, set up, and it's a doddle. It's all there ready for you, and it's all inputted. Just like, for example, you'd have registers pre-populated into Sims or whatever software you use. We'd have class lists and class codes pre-populated into our Teams, so it works really well. But manually, again, it's very user friendly, and if you're setting it up for your own classes, it's not so much of an issue. It's more if you're setting them up for an entire institution, I think that it needs to be automated, really.
Yeah.
Okay, so Abby, this is you again.
Okay, so the other thing you can do in terms of making Teams more usable for your classes is to add tabs to customize your team. So you might want to have tabs to different bits of software or different bits of SharePoint, etc., for them to be able to use, your students to be able to use. So this is a clip of my chemistry team, which there is only me in, okay, at the moment, so that's why I use this one. Essentially, you have what the Microsoft call the We space. So this bar at the top of your Teams is everything that you and your team can see and use. So this is a really good way of making sure that everything's really accessible to your team and they can see it all at once. So we've got a staff notebook here. Underneath this 7 more, there are things like bits of software like OneNote or Nearpod or Kahoot, anything like that you can add as a tab to help to customize your team. So the way that you would do that is you would click on the plus button. It's really interesting in Teams actually that they have sort of streamlined So you use the same command for everything in all parts of Teams, don't you? So if you want to add something, you always add the plus button. If you want to find out what more you can do, you always click on the ellipsis. I found out that was called, but the 3 little dots will tell you what you're able to do in that channel and give you more options. So if you clicked on the plus button, you would come up with a screen that looks like that. And as you can see, I've just screenshotted a little part of it. If you did this in Teams and scrolled down, you would see that there is loads and loads and loads of bits of software that you can add to personalize your team. So as I say, if you use Nearpod regularly, then that might be a good one to have up there. You can make links to, I know that Ash and John have got links to the lab book answers, haven't you, for your lab books for your classes up there, so the students just have to click one thing in order to find the information that they want. Okay, so obviously that would be different for everybody there, but that's always worth having a play with. You will then get something that looks like this. I chose Nearpod, and you just literally add it. So it's really, really straightforward. It's really, really quick to do. You can change your mind as well by you can remove them, but you don't really need to. It doesn't matter that they're there for posterity. Okay. So next bit is back to Ash again. You're setting up meetings now.
Yeah. So setting up meetings then. So this is an important one. You can set up meetings with colleagues, you can set up meetings with students, you can set up meetings with whoever you like, really. So, well, as long as they're willing to accept, I guess. So you've got this bar on the left-hand side of your Teams panel, okay? Now, you'll be clicking on calendar for this, and you can see here, these are some of the teams I've got on my team space. So you click calendar, and it will come up with the calendar of the week. And at the top right, you've got 2 options. So you can click in any of these spaces on the calendar and click Meet Now, and that will automatically start a meeting, and then you can add participants into it on the fly if you want to. Or you can set up a meeting by clicking the top right button. You can schedule it, and that will mean that the person you're scheduling it with will get an email notification, and they'll get an announcement on Teams, I guess it's called, or they'll get some activity update on Teams, and it will tell them that you're trying to organise a meeting with them. So once you click that button, what you'll find is 2 options. You can either schedule a meeting, or you can set up a live event. Now, scheduling a meeting is great because you can set up rolling lessons or meetings with colleagues or students that just happen every single week that you decide. And we'll look a little bit more in those options later. The second one, it's not as useful for teaching staff, but it's the live event. Now, this is really useful for teaching staff if you're delivering some training. What we're doing at the moment is the live event. It would be great if you were doing it with parents, for example, actually. So yeah, I'd take that back, really. It could be very useful for teachers. But your day-to-day meetings and lessons will be through the schedule meeting function. Now, if you click schedule meeting, this is what you will, just that button there. If you click schedule meeting, this is what you'll be faced with. So you'll be able to put a title in there. So it could be lesson 5, French or whatever. You add your attendees there, and basically you start typing the attendee's name, and it will come up with the attendees that you can click and select. And what I quite like is you can also add optional attendees. So these are for people who, you know, it might be of interest to, but they're not required in that lesson or meeting. Then obviously you add your date, your time. Do you want it to be an all-day event, or do you want it to be an hour's lesson, an hour and a half, for example? The really important one there is that you can select whether it repeats or not. So if you click that drop-down menu, you can set it to repeat weekly, monthly, does not repeat at all. So you'll just have that one meeting and then it's done. And then you can also add channels. So you can add, you can add multiple channels at once if you like, along with a location, and you can even add details there as well. Now, I don't typically add the location or details for my lessons. It will literally just be the lesson title, the attendees, and you can just start typing the class code in there and it'll invite the entire class and the time and date.
It's just, sorry, I'm
No,
interrupting.
go for it.
It's just worth saying at this point that if you set up a meeting within a team, so for instance, if I set one up within my Year 2 chemistry team, then their names would already be pre-populated, so I don't have to add required attendees. It's already there because they're already part of that team, so they already get a notification that there's a meeting in that team happening at that particular time. Yeah,
that's a great point. Yeah, so that'll save you some on workload there as well. Yeah, so that's really scheduling meetings. I don't tend to do this for my lessons, to be honest. Oh yeah, and don't forget to press save either. Yeah, definitely press save, because if you don't press save, it won't get sent out. I mean, I don't tend to do this, and I'll get onto that a bit later why. It's my personal preference, really. But it's great if you just want a rolling lesson. It'll pop up in students' calendars, and it works quite well.
So this slide is just a bit more about the stuff that you can add into Teams. So the class activities that we do, and it's basically just a quick slide that I wanted to add just to talk about what we do really to try to make the remote classroom a bit more normal. So what we've kind of thought about doing and what we've tried to introduce so that the students get a bit of a better experience from us, because as I said earlier, you know, at the beginning my lessons were a bit rubbish, they were boring. I would spend a lot of time peering at the screen thing, you know, saying to the students, can you hear me, can you see me, and all of that kind of thing. I wanted to write on a whiteboard once and show them on the what I was writing on the photograph. That was very challenging for me because I couldn't work out why it was backwards on my camera and they could see it. All right.
Never boring.
Thank you, John. Okay, so these are just a few bits of software that I've started to add that actually do fit into Teams lessons really, really well. Things like Nearpod and Kahoot and OneNote actually I have used on Teams lessons even when the students are in the classroom with me. So they are really, really useful, and some of them will get covered, as I say, later on in these webinars. So yeah, don't just think about Teams as just being somewhere where you just send messages to students and you just have meetings with them, and you have to you know, think yourself of how to put a lesson together. There is already loads of software out there and stuff that you use all the time anyway, probably in your lessons, that you can adapt to a lesson in Teams.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add to that as well. That in the beginning, my lessons as well, I'd be thinking, is the camera working? Can they hear me? What kind of experience are they getting? And I'd have some, you know, some worries about the experience the students were getting. And I think it comes down to confidence. And when you've actually used it for a while and you gain more confidence with it, it becomes a lot easier. It's almost like being an NQT again, where you're in this kind of unfamiliar environment. But then before you know it, it's routine and it's easy, and you're using it because it's easier rather than because, you know, it's the only way you can engage the students. Like Abby said there, you know, actually using it in lessons when the students are there, I think is an indication of how useful it can be, to be honest.
And how the students have got used to it as well, you know, so they just accept that in lesson time, sometimes I'm going to say to them, right, get your phones, but, you know, you need Kahoot on or OneNote or whatever it is. We're going to do this via this particular activity. And I think, to be fair, since September as well, because we've done that a bit more when we've gone to more blended learning, it's been less daunting for them as well as for us, obviously, as well.
And yeah, it's quite surprised me as well, actually, touching on what you've just said, Abby, is students do find it quite easy compared to staff. I know, which surprised me really, but I had a student telling me the other day that it's just like WhatsApp, you know, I just use WhatsApp, or it's just like Facebook Messenger or Instagram, it's not a big deal. And she was saying she couldn't understand why certain other students were struggling with it, and fair enough, you know, some students will struggle. And there is also the issue of, you know, maybe certain students who, you know, maybe have, you know, difficult situations at home or things like that. They may not have access to smartphones or devices. We have had experience with that, but they do tend to be quite rare. Most students do have access to that, but in those cases you can always liaise with your IT department and see if you can, go about getting a loan system going on, or maybe just having small groups of students on site, or, there's ways to get around that really. And touching on what Abby was saying as well is, she was talking about how you can use your resources already. Well, OneNote is great because you can put your worksheets on there, you can put quizzes on there, students can hand work in on there. So all of the resources you've already built up over the years, Teams will help you use them remotely. YouTube is something I make a lot of use of in my lessons. I like showing them animations and things like that, showing how molecules interact and subcellular functions and organisms and things like that. And actually, YouTube is a big part of some of my lessons. If I can explain a concept like facilitated diffusion, for example, but if I can show them it, they'll understand it a lot better. And one thing we'll show you hopefully at the end of this session is you can actually stream videos through Teams, and they will be able to see the video and hear the video. So again, it's just like showing a little 3-4 minute animation in lesson. It's fairly seamless as long as you've got a decent internet connection. It's no different than actually showing them the video in person.
The best thing about Teams as well is that from the student's point of view is that once they've got it on their phone and you tell them which bits of software they're going to need next, they just load them up through Teams, so they don't have to constantly come out of it and load up a different app. Yeah. If you want them to go on Nearpod, then they just get Nearpod through their Teams, so they just click on the link that you've sent them, or they click on the tab that you've put in your team. So that's what makes it really easy. So it takes away all that sort of loading and streaming and lagging that phones and bits of software can do, doesn't it?
I have to say one thing that I did find a bit of a challenge as well, that I didn't really like about Teams in the beginning, was the amount of notifications you'd get.
Yeah.
And there are actually ways to manage those notifications. You can turn them off completely, which I've actually done. So I've got Teams on my phone and I've turned my notifications off completely because I don't want notifications popping up all the time, hundreds of times a day, telling me a student's uploaded a piece of work or sent me a message or someone's organised a meeting.
Do it at weird times of the day, don't you? In the middle of the night and things.
But you can silence all of that. And actually the only way I'll know I've got a notification is if I click on the app now, and then they'll all be there. So I actually choose when Teams shows me information rather than it firing notifications at me. But I didn't like that to begin with. So yeah, this
just
next
give you
one.
a time check, guys. You've got 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know. We are a bit aware of that.
Yeah.
We probably want us to stop talking so we can.
Maybe go on to the live demo bit and then the Q&As at the end. We are going to share the PowerPoint.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we'll go into the live demo. Shall I pass over to you, Abby?
This is the scary bit. So.
Do you mean you're scared because I'm doing it? Because they've just told me.
Yeah, hang on to the edge of your seats, guys. This is going to be interesting.
Did you load up the web bit of Teams? You did on your computer, didn't you?
You can click on the Teams on the left-hand side. There you go.
If we click on Teams,
we should be able to use it from there, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
If you could
maximise that. This is just demonstrating that we are really not experts.
So yeah, this is our channel here. So you see there where it says hidden channel, okay, and you click on that, and there's the hidden channel. Yeah, you have to actually click show. So when you've got your team like this, you can change your picture by clicking that button. Let's change it to William Shakespeare.
See, John's twitching now. She's changing.
Yeah, we're gonna ruin John's Teams, but it's all in the name of the Trailblazer webinar, so it's fine.
Would you maximise the team screen just so it fills the desktop? Yeah.
Yeah, of course I will. Yeah. Okay, so you can change the picture there. You can change the name of it. So you can click Edit Team. You can change that name there if you wish. You can click on this button here and you can see all different kinds of levels of education, and then that will show different avatars. You can have all different kind of subject areas. So it's quite nice really to personalize it, because if you're doing maths, you can put a pie chart or a calculator, which is obviously really, really exciting. If you do science, you can do your microscopes or whatever. So there's all sorts there. I won't stay on that too long. I could geek out on that for a while, but yeah, Abby, do you want to go through some features?
Okay, yes. We were talking before about loading resources or posting something to the students. So you always click on this blue button here, new conversation. When you get that bar up, you've then got a few choices, so you can make an announcement. So if you want to make something really stand out, like Ash has done up here and put welcome to the Trailblazer demo team, you would click on the A format there, and under this new conversation tab that's just turned up, you can turn it into an announcement. Okay, and that will give you the opportunity to type a headline, make a big announcement. There are a certain number of characters that you can use, so it's character limited, so you can't just make a massive announcement, but it's really useful for things like homework hand-in days, or things that they have to remember, like, you know, they're doing a practical in my lesson, so they need to bring the lab book, something like that. I'm trying to use that much more, because if I just get rid of that and go back, oh, what's happened? We're just in that. Yes. So I tend to use these announcements much more in my channels now, because they tend to have dates with them. So if the students are looking for a homework resource or something that I posted within that lesson, it makes it easier for them to find, because it's a bit more you know, out there, rather than just typing a little message which will come up looking something like that.
Well, can we just go on the announcements again, Abby?
Yeah.
Because there's a few things I was going to touch on in the presentation on that. Yeah, so there's some quite nice settings here. So, for example, you know, let's put Trailblazer webinar. Okay, so we've got our title there. Now you can add an illustration. So if you click here, you can set a background. You can change the colour scheme to make it quite nice and aesthetically pleasing. You could choose an illustration. Now, for example, I would always use the dragon, and so would John as well, with our biologists if it was homework. Okay, so that's like a really nice visual way of them knowing where the homework is, because, you know, if you've got 6 months worth of Teams chat on a channel, for example, it might take a little bit of scrolling up to find the bit they need, and if you can see the dragon there, then they'll know that's the homework, and it's fairly obvious for them. Now, what you can also do, you add your subheading. So let's set you all some homework today.
You're writing in there.
Yeah, and then homework, and then if we put due the 17th of November 2020, because we're being dragons. Then what you can do, if you want the students to see this, if I just press send there, the students wouldn't know I'd posted it. They'd have no idea, other than the fact that little team channel would go dark black. Okay, well, it'd embolden. Sorry, it'd embolden. So what you can actually do is you can put at, and then you can add the team. Okay, and you can see there some of the presenters from the Trailblazer Academy are there. And if I wanted to say, for example, John, to be able to see this, I'd just put the first 3 letters of his email, and there we go, he's linked in. And when I send that, it will pop up with an activity notification there. So that red one, well, that one with the red border rather, sorry, will turn to 2, telling him that he's had it. And if he's got notifications enabled, that will also pop up on his phone. Now, another thing you can do is you can click on post in multiple channels. So let's say you were a GCSE maths teacher and you had 4 GCSE maths groups. What you can do is you can select channels that this will also post into, okay? And you literally just tick the tick box, and then that will post into their channels automatically, saving you on workload. So you're not going to have to type 4 different announcements, which is great. It's really beneficial, to be honest.
Can I just add to that one really quickly, Ash?
Yeah, please.
If you are posting to multiple channels, that's where you can only share links. If you actually share a physical file, it won't let you post to multiple channels. So,
Right.
Abby and Ash, that's why you've got to book your ideas up. There is actually a question. Save your workload. there is actually a question that I've just published from Claire, and that was going back to when you were talking about channels, Ashley. So if you want to have a look at that one, basically what they were asking was if they were when you know that hidden channel thing that you showed, Ashley.
Yes.
It wasn't actually hidden to students because the students just get to do a show. So if you could click on the 3 dots near the Trailblazer demo team to add a new channel, and then just show them where the option to add it as a private channel is. I'll make this full screen just so it does so if you see down the bottom privacy, if you don't want your students to see it, what you'll have to do is choose the channel where it says privacy. You'd have to make it private, and then when you make this, it will then ask you who do you want to be in the team. So if you want a teacher's channel, you would then click next and then only add the teachers in to that channel. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So you can just add specific people. Yeah.
The students won't be able to see that, and they won't be able to unhide it, and it will appear if you just click done. It'll just appear. I think you've deleted me. You need to add me as a teacher.
Oh, sorry there.
Doesn't matter if you just show how it appears with a padlock next to it.
Yes.
And then as an owner, you can click on the 3 dots and you can add the teachers.
Brilliant.
So you can add more members to that channel.
And the other thing to remember to do when you set that channel up, let me just delete that channel. Okay, so when you set that channel up, so let's just repeat that one more time. So if we go add channel, test channel, and then we'll put it as private again. But if you're doing it standard and you want all of your students to see it, you tick that box. Because if you don't tick that box, it will just say one hidden channel, and then the students will have to manually click on it and then find that channel and click show. And you don't want that, because that's just a barrier to them. You know, say you've posted a homework in that channel, if it's not visible on their list, and it won't give them notifications, and it'll be a barrier to them actually completing that work. Which what we want to do is remove as many excuses and barriers, because we all know with remote learning there can be excuses and there can be ways that they're trying to wiggle out a little bit.
Yeah.
One last thing, sorry, is you can also change the channel notifications for each individual channel. So if there's one channel that you want notifications on, but you want to silence everything else, you can put them on. So you can really tailor the notifications to your needs.
Would you show adding a tab, and then we can
Okay, I'll go in our teams. So we talked about adding a tab before. You would add that up at the top here. So if you click on the plus button, okay, that will just load up all the different sorts of tabs that you can add. And as I said, this is what I screenshotted earlier in my PowerPoint, but if you scroll down, you will see that there is literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different tabs that you could add. So I'm just going to pick one at random. Let's try that one, and then I'll get a button like that, and again you would just click add and it would end up as a tab at the top. Okay, it's asking me there if I want to post to the channel about this tab. That would mean that you would get a notification in the posts that a new tab had been added. I would always probably click that if I was telling students that new tab had been added, and then the save button would be highlighted and you could just save that. I don't actually know what Azure DevOps is, so I will just come out of that again. We've added things like notes and Seneca up here. If any of you use Seneca Learning, you can just literally, oh, that's not set up. Oh dear, we won't do that then. The notes one that I think hopefully is set up, but it's taking its time. Okay, so yeah, that's just a link to a collaboration space for class notebook that will get talked to you in a webinar about OneNote. You'll be able to see that. Okay, we've got about 9 minutes left, haven't we? So we're quite happy to take questions now. The only thing I'd say at the end is that if you are just starting out with Teams and this is all a bit daunting, I would say try and keep it really simple. So kind of limit the number of teams that you set up, and within those teams limit the number of channels that you have. That makes it much less complicated to follow. So, and even now in say most of my class teams, I tend to only have one channel. If I'm running them on my own, you know, if I'm the only teacher, then I tend to just have a general channel, and everything else I sort of sort out in the student resources section on SharePoint and things. I don't have lots of channels. I find that the students find that a bit complicated, but that's just my opinion. It might be me that finds it complicated really rather than them, but that's my excuse. I'm sticking to it.
Don't blame you. So yeah, guys, if there's any questions, you know, please, we've got some time for a Q&A session now. Please drop them in the chat, and we'll try and get back to you, and we'll try and do it. If there's, for example, if there's any features you want us to demo, you know, feel free to ask us.
If there's anything you want expanding on in a subsequent webinar at some point as well, please let us know, and then we can add that into our program as well. I think
so I've got one that we haven't published from Anonymous. Okay, do you find if there's any groups that engage less through Teams? And also, if you could, I've posted in the, I've made an announcement. If you could promote that people fill in that the form, because it tells us how to sort of adapt future webinars and if they want any further support from us as a demonstrator.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of, are there any groups that engage less? Now, I would say hand on heart, no. They all engage to the same extent, I would have thought, and the engagement is pretty high. You know, I would say that the attendance at remote lessons is the same as, if not better sometimes, than it is at in-class lessons, because we've got students self-isolating and things now.
Yeah.
And obviously they can come to the remote lessons if they're self-isolating. At the beginning, it was more difficult, and when I say the beginning, in the first lockdown, but we were just introducing Teams, so I think you've kind of, to some extent, you know, you need to train the students to like Teams, and it doesn't take that long for them to get on board with it. Once they are able to see what you can do with it, and the fact that you're trying to help them, and that it's relatively straightforward to use, I think they get on board with it and, you know, and give in, as it were.
Yeah.
To you eventually.
No, I do.
Diane's posted a question for you as well.
Oh, okay. Let's have a look. So Diane said, what apps have you that you find the most useful to add to the channels?
I've added your screen back on if you did want to show some
yes,
apps.
please. Yeah, that'd be great. Personally, I've added Seneca. I find Seneca really useful. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's basically a quiz game. Well, I call it a game. It's more like fact recall. So it has a map of the world and different points on that map. And basically they have to answer questions correctly in order to earn those cities and locations around the world. And they have to build a map of your subject. I find that works really well. And there's some really good Senecas that are pre-made, which again, it's great for a starter or a plenary or a bit of revision for the students. So yeah, any from you, Abby?
Well, one that I've started to use loads just recently actually is OneNote, and OneNote is a piece of software, Microsoft software, and I find it really useful because you can literally cut and paste or drag and drop anything into OneNote and then share it with your students. So effectively, from my point of view, it's like a pucker pad, a digital pucker pad. So you separate it into chapters and pages, and those pages can have anything you want on it, just like a notepad that you might have at home. The thing with your with this digital notepad is that you can then share pages with your students. So you can share, I can make snip and paste a worksheet that I have in paper form onto a OneNote. I can then share that page with my students. It takes literally 5 minutes to do. And then in the lesson, I can get them working on that worksheet within OneNote. So they can write on that with a finger, they can digital ink it, they can type on it, they can put other pictures on it, they can do all sorts of things. And the best thing about it is that I see it in real time, so I can monitor their work through the class notebook. So I would say that's the most useful piece of.
There's another question in there from Claire, if you could have a read of that one. One app that I would definitely say you need to add to every single class team, it's actually a Teams app called Insights. So would you click plus, Ashley, and just sort of show Insights on there? Now what Insights does is it monitors the students' interaction. So it's basically a bit like, and what it tells you to do when it loads up, say it says students don't have access to class insights, so uncheck that box. And if you just click save, Ashley, what this does is it tells you, obviously this is just a demo team, but if you add classes, it tells you when the students log on, what they click on, and things like that. So it does give you quite a lot of engagement. If you click on where it says inactive students, Ash, if you just, obviously this is just for staff, but if you click track student activity on the left hand side, that brings up a calendar, and anytime a student has been in your team, it comes up as a little dash there. And if you click on the actual dash itself, it lets you then see what they did. So you can see if a student says to you, oh, I tried doing that homework, and then you say, right, when were you on? And then you can go into this and it tells you whether they were or not. So you can see there that it actually, if you hover over little bits, if you just hover, it says that I accessed the general channel and did that sort of, I accessed assignments files. So if a student's telling you that they tried to do an assignment, you can check.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to be using that. It's like Big Brother, isn't it? CCTV. Great. Okay.
Well, that brings us on to there's all the assignments apps to talk about as well, which is in a webinar later on that Lee's going to talk about, and that's a really useful way of tracking what students are doing. Much easier really than it was in the old-fashioned way.
So I've published Claire's question.
So Claire said, do we use another VLE as well, or have you just adopted Teams and SharePoint for that purpose?
So we did use Moodle, that was our VLE. I would say that probably since June, I haven't used Moodle. The only time I've ever used it is if I know that resources on there that I want to use with my students, I just download it and put it on Teams now. Teams is quicker. It's more efficient. It's easier for the students to use. They used to moan like mad about Moodle and how long it was, you know, and it seemed that if lots of people were using it all at once, it used to get really slow as well. So yeah, I just use Teams.
I think we are at the point now where technology isn't a barrier anymore. It used to be, you know, people would say e-learning and it'd be like, that's great in theory. At least when I first started teaching, e-learning, that's great in theory, but it adds workload to staff. And there's that little bit of a feeling of that from at least I had it, you know, I had that feeling that, oh, is this going to be something that adds to my workload? And it's forcing students to use the e-learning tools. It's shoehorning them in when they might go wrong. But I think we are actually at a stage now where e-learning genuinely makes, you know, it's maybe there's always been an argument that e-learning has made lessons better, but e-learning now makes lessons easier. And I think that's a key turning point. When you go on OneNote and you can look at 10 different students' work without leaving your seat as they're doing it, that makes your life easier. You don't have to go to 10 different points in the room to have a quick read of their work. You can see it as they're writing it, as they're typing it, and it saves you on, it can help you with that management of the group.
And you know, sort of the old-fashioned way would be to find your file that you want to photocopy and send it to the photocopier and then go and pick it up from the photocopier. Well, in that time, I can make a digital version of the worksheet without leaving my desk. you know, and so that has definitely saved time. Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's the webinar about finished, unless we've got any more questions coming through. I think we might have one more.
I did it for you. It was where obviously if you're in a meeting you have to download the attendance before you click close, which is a little bit annoying. I think they are trying to rectify that, but it was just a question about, can you download the data? I don't know if you can export it from Insights. I don't know if you can click on there, Ashley, and see if it does let you export it in some way. If we just bring that back up on the screen, but it keeps a year's worth of data, so you still have this. It doesn't disappear. I think from my perspective, I think it is just a view, so I don't know whether you can download it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, an alternative thing you can do is you can just have your register open at the same time as Teams, and you can just do the register at the start of the lesson and call out the students' names if you want to.
I think it's mainly for the interaction to see if they disappear and stuff like that. So if you download the attendance report, it tells you when they signed in and signed out. So that is quite useful.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Cool. There's no more questions. Thank you. I'll put you guys back on full screen just to say goodbye. But thank you very much for that, guys. That's really helpful.
No, just want to say thank you for your time this evening, guys, and I hope at least one thing we've said tonight has been of use to some of you, because I know it is a big challenge moving from classroom-based teaching to remote learning. So hopefully we've been some help, and you know, we're always on hand if anyone has any further questions. You can send them through to John, and we can help with those. And we'll be hope to see you in future webinars as well.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
People could just fill out that form, if you could push that, I've just posted it.
Yeah. Also, John's posted a feedback form. If you could fill that out and give us your honest feedback, that'd be great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks all.
Good night.
Yeah. Goodbye.